Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about the multilingual changes in versions 8 and 9, so stay with me. In versions 8 and 9 we did a couple of changes to how multilingual sites work in Typo 3. And we're going to go over the most important aspects for developers as you requested in the comments. So let's go with that. So the first thing you will notice if you run Typo 3 version 9 is that the Pages language overlay table is gone now. Everything is stored also in the Pages table, like every other table. So we have this single special case removed from core, and you no longer have to fiddle around with these things. The important thing is, though, that you can no longer just plainly select pages, say under a given parent ID, because you might get the translation as well. So always make sure to provide the proper syslanguage UID constraint in your SQL. And we're going to take a look at how this looks right now. So what we have here is a simple select statement where we select the UID, the title, syslanguage UID, and the backend layout from pages. And you're going to see why we're selecting backend layout as well. And you can see that there's a couple of pages right here. And this one, mit Websted, I hope to the Danish guys that I pronounced this correctly, bear with me, has the syslanguage UID being set to 1. And down here you can see a couple more syslanguage UID records, all in the pages table, just how you would expect it to be with TT content records or your own records. This all now behaves exactly the same. Just keep in mind to select the correct stuff. The interesting thing is that we can now simply select the two pages. So we say where UID is in 1 and 5. These should be the correct pages. Yeah, so we have my site and mit Websted, which is syslanguage UID 1. And if we select the, oh, I hope that's correct, L10 and parent, it should be. Yeah, you can now see that the L10 and parent of the Danish translation is indeed the UID 1, which is my site. So just how you would expect it to behave. The cool new thing that we added is that we remove the necessity for overlays. So what overlays are, if we take a look at TCA right here, and we'll close the database thing, is that we are in the TCA definition for the pages table. And if we scroll down in the columns, we have the column backend layout, and that's why we selected that earlier. And you can see that it has L10N mode set to exclude. So what this means is if we head over to the backend, if we edit the Danish translation right here, there's no way that we can set the backend layout of the translation. If we go to the default language, though, on the Appearance tab, we can select the backend layout. And this is because we excluded this field in translations. You might know that from your other records as well. It's basic stuff, and it's very old. I think it dates back almost 15 years now that we implemented that as a functionality. So stuff that your editors should not change in a translation, the fields are simply not displayed. The interesting thing is, though, that what happens here is that you need to overlay the record. So you get the translated record, there's a couple of fields that are not being displayed, and then you need to put the original record on top of that in order to get all your data. So imagine you have a page tree with, say, 500 pages, and every page is translated. You select all the 500 translations. That's easy. It's a single SQL statement, right? But now you need to overlay each page individually again in order to get the proper overlaid record. So we have 500 SQL statements plus the one that we already did. And as you can imagine, this is actually pretty slow. Also, your extension authors, the developers you have in your company or on your local team, need to be aware of translated things. So they select records in an extension, and they need to be aware that they need to overlay the original records because you changed some field to alt and end mode equals exclude. That's a problem. But we got a solution for that. Let's take a look. So we're back in our SQL view, and if we take a look, we can again see that the backend layout field is identical in both pages. So what happens if we change the backend layout in the original language to our two-column layout that we used in an earlier video? We save this, we go to the Danish version, and there is no backend layout field, so the editor can change it. So this is when you would need to do the overlay, right? No, no more. Because if we go back to the SQL and execute the SQL statement, you can actually see that the value of backend layout has been synchronized between the original and the derived languages. So what you can do now is you can flat out select the records in the given language, because Typo3's core will keep that data in sync for you. So we no longer have one SQL statement plus 500 overlay statements. You just have one SQL statement. And you select flat out in that language that you want to have your data in. There's a caveat though. You can no longer work next to Typo3's APIs. So if you do a change in the database manually, you need to make sure that all your data is kept in sync. If you do changes within an extension to whatever field, you need to manually sync all that data or use Typo3's core APIs to do so. And this is a really helpful thing. It's amazingly fast. It's easier to understand for, say, new developers that don't know what the overlay idea was. And in general, we want to get rid of overlays because it's an issue. One other important thing that we have is the mark until new right here. So we're going to find this field in our TCA definition. And just as a small update, tiny helpful feature, thanks Georg for that, is that you will now see the name of the column next to it if you have the debug mode enabled. So we can just copy over the name, head over to our pages TCA, close that down, then use the search, and the new until is up here. And what we have here, it's a regular field, and in configuration, you see the new key behavior, allow language synchronization equals true. So what does this do? If we head back to the backend and switch to the default language again, we have the mark new until field right here. And we can edit this. And we simply say that this page is supposed to be marked as new until April 26th, because, hey, why not? So we save and close this, and then open up the Danish version, and you see that this is a read-only field right now. Let's take a look what the database has to say about this. So we want to grab new until as well, and you can see that also this data has been synced over from the parent record, the default language, to the translation. This is awesome, but what if we want an editor to actually change this just in the translation? And the allow language synchronization switch that we saw in TCA just a minute ago will act as a config switch where you can see these two radio buttons down here. So what's happening is right now it's set to the value of the default language as we would expect it. But we can now change this value to a custom value, save it. So the Danish version is only new until April 19th because the Danish guys are fast. And if we save this and then head over to our SQL statement, you can now see that both timestamps back here are different. Now, where is this stuff stored? We can simply take a look at the fields that we have, and there's L10N, I think it's state, if I'm not mistaken. Hopefully it is. Yeah. So if we take a look at what we got right here, so I'm going to make these columns a bit more narrow. Hopefully that works. It's hard to see in the studio right now. So as you can see, this is obviously JSON, and I hope that we can view this somewhere properly. Obviously we can't. Yeah, so we're just going to head over to some random JSON beautifier online. That makes sense. Yep, curious concept. Great, guys. So we, remove the X up here, and then we process it, and then we can see what's happening. And what we can see here is that it's a JSON object of all the fields in that specific table, in our case it's pages, that have been set to allow language synchronization. And it has identifiers which go, okay, the start time field should come from the parent record, etc., etc., etc. And what you can see here is that the new until value is set to custom, because that's what the editor clicked, which then instructs the data synchronization tool in Typo3's API to no longer synchronize the data from the parent record. And this is basically the biggest multi-language changes we have for you. So we hope you like those. If you have anything else that you want to add, have an idea, hit us up. What we've seen here is field synchronization, right? So you have a record with a certain field, with a translation, and we synchronize that specific field. We are already starting to take a look at basically synchronizing entire records. So imagine this. You have a couple of products in 10 languages, and you add a new product. And you want to make sure that each product is properly translated. So you can basically have the entire record set to synchronize. And if you add a new record in the default language, it will automatically create the new records for you and keep the entire record in sync, not just a single field. So these are things that we're investigating right now. So you can just plainly select stuff in a single language, and it should be faster for you to work with. And as usual, if you have any suggestions, leave them in the comment box below. Please subscribe to the channel and continue using Typo3. See you next time.